Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum bottom ba da da 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 ba da da. You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
I'm Brad Gullickson.
And each month we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. In this episode, if you go down to the woods today, you'd better not go alone. It's lovely down in the woods today, but safer to stay at home. For every bear that ever there was will gather there for certain, because today's the day the teddy bears have their picnic in our Creator Corner. We're talking to Patrick Horvath about one of this year's very best first issues, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, from IDW.
Well, I'm unsettled, which is probably a good place to be when talking about this comic book. Or that unease could be coming from the fact that Lisa and I are recording this intro and outro weeks before releasing the episode. While you're hearing this, we've actually just traveled from Austin, Texas, back to Virginia, going from the Fantastic Fest Film Festival to the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester, Virginia's Lost Weekend Film Festival. The Winchester Alamo is kind of like our home away from home, which any longtime listener knows. We host a comic book film club, and last night Lisa and I just did the screening of the entire Dark Knight trilogy. So much fun hosting that event.
It certainly was. It felt like a good warm-up for attending two film festivals back-to-back.
Absolutely.
Fantastic Fest and Lost Weekend.
A lot of sitting going on.
Oh, yeah. And it had been a while since I had watched the Nolan trilogy, and so it was also kind of like, it felt like a slip in time to rewatch those films.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I have my favorites, which are probably not the majority's favorites. I know everyone thinks The Dark Knight is the best one. I prefer Batman Begins. Mm-hmm. But on this rewatch, watching all of them back to back to back, I came away really enjoying The Dark Knight Rises.
It's the most fun. I think Anne Hathaway's Catwoman adds a really interesting and fun element to the story, and I enjoy Bane.
Love Bane.
I love how much Tom Hardy committed to this role, and I can understand every word he says. I feel like the parent of a toddler. It's like, he's talking, you guys. How do you not understand? But I like it. I like the fact that Dark Knight Rises is an eat the rich film.
Yes.
I think it's such an interesting counterpoint to the, Batman is a fascist. Communism is also really bad and toxic. I kind of wish that they had pushed Bane's communism agenda even further. I wish we had seen more of the recruiting, brainwashing process to make him even more menacing.
I think we would have seen that if this was post 2016.
Right.
It's really interesting watching Dark Knight Rises in 2023, knowing that it's right before the Trump era.
Right.
And I think if we had gotten to the Trump era and Nolan had then done his Tale of Two Cities homage, it would have been even more extreme. As is, it's pretty extreme, and I was definitely vibing with what Nolan was trying to do. Like Christian Ward said in the virtual intro to that episode, or to that movie, Dark Knight Rises is wonky. It's not a perfect film, but its ideas are delicious.
Mm-hmm. One other thing that really stood out to me at this screening, and I don't know if it's because we had come off of doing the Ninja Turtle screenings, but there were no kids at our film club.
There was one 13-year-old who did The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, but that was it. It was mostly just a bunch of old folks.
Like ourselves. And we enjoy our company.
Yes, absolutely. And I had a great time with the people who came out. I especially love everyone who did the whole trilogy with us. Mm-hmm. That final crowd for The Dark Knight Rises was the smallest crowd, but my favorite crowd.
But this was our biggest comic book giveaway. We brought like a short box full of Batman comics, and it felt like, not that I don't think that more adults should be reading comics, but like with this film club, I want to create lifers. I want to create people who are going to want to buy single issues for the next 50 years.
I tailored the short box. Like, so I wanted to give a comic to everybody who came to the show, and we did that. We actually gave multiple comics to everybody who came to the show. But I tailored that short box to be like, there are some, grim, dark Batman comics in there. There were some teen plus comics in there, and then there were some all ages comics in there. And I didn't need to give away any of the all ages ones.
And it's impossible to change a middle-aged person's mind. Like if we hand someone a middle-aged person a comic, if they're not already reading comics, it's going to take more than just like a here's something free to create someone.
I hear you. I do have the fantasy that even that middle-aged person,
but it's a fantasy.
Once given the comic in the hand, might open that up and discover something in it. I hear you just cut me off by saying, yeah, but it's a fantasy, Brad. The word you used there was fantasy. And I hear you, but let me have that fantasy. And I do think that it must occur every now and again. We have friends who started reading comics. Oh, I don't know, like Lisa on this podcast when they were in their 20s or older.
Right. I recognize that I'm being a little bit of a troll by saying, like, there's no point in giving comics away to anybody. Like, we want to give away comics. That is part of the point of what we're doing with the Alamo Drafthouse Winchester. But I'm just trying to drive this conversation car in the direction of, we need an all-ages Batman screening.
Totally. Absolutely agree. That was the thing that we were really talking about driving home from the Winchester last night. It is weird to go to 3 Batman movies, and they are super scary at times, very violent, and would make kids cry.
And also are not fully committing to the whimsy that is inherent in Batman and Batman villains.
Nolan's going for a realism thing, right? But I just feel like we've been chasing that for a while, and we get the Matt Reeves Batman, and it's like another oh, this is serious. We're telling serious comic book stories. And I miss some of that fantasy and whimsy that you're talking about, that you find in the comics, that you find in the cartoons, that you see in like Batman the Animated Series. But even Batman the Animated Series, when we screened Mask of the Phantasm and we had more kids in attendance, those kids that were there left crying.
Yeah. I'll never forget that mom buying a Brave and the Bold copy from 4-Color Fantasies and showing her little crying daughter, like, see, Batman's okay. Everything works out. But I want to recreate the magic that we had at our Mutant Mayhem screening, where it was full of kids who were crazy excited for the Turtles, and they had their own opinions about the Turtles, and they had their own costumes about the Turtles, and they wanted to share their thoughts about the Turtles. I want that for Batman.
Yeah, and I think there is an appetite for a younger skewing Batman story. I also think you could just do a Goonies-esque all ages Batman story where a 5-year-old can enjoy it and a 44-year-old can enjoy it.
And we're not talking about Lego Batman.
No.
We're not talking about a comedy. We're talking about something that is earnestly Batman, but still appropriate and accessible for all kinds of maturity levels.
Yeah, I love Lego Batman. I love Batman the Brave and the Bold cartoon. In fact, that might be my favorite interpretation of a Batman comic, the Brave and the Bold show. But I think we can get, when you read John and the Impossible Monsters, or Mark Waid and Chris Samnee's Captain America run. Any kid could pick those books up. Any adult can pick those books up and just enjoy it. And there are so many good stories being told right now in 2023 in the all-ages comic book market. Movies could learn something from those books.
I think what makes a good YA comic is it is adventure over action. There's still action, but it's not the driving force. The violence is not the driving force of the narrative.
Punching's okay, but, talking about the scars in your mouth and putting knives in women's mouths, not so much.
The plot is layered, as in, while you're reading the comic, you are rewarded for paying attention and gathering ideas and clues and that kind of thing. You can probably see the direction I'm going in for my Batman film. And then 3, there is a lesson wrapped into the narrative. There is an element of a morality tale as part of the YA idea.
A couple of weeks ago, when we had Christian Ward on the show talking about Batman City of Madness, he praised Batman as a flexible character. Mm-hmm. And his popularity allows him to last and be flexible. And we have seen so many different types of Batman over the 80 plus years that he's existed, right? And right now on the stands, half of DC's slate are Batman comics. So Batman can afford many different tracks because many people will buy those tracks. And I think we just need a few more that are geared to all ages and a younger crowd.
There's so much about Batman that is already so YA friendly. Just watching the Nolan films, they all have messages wrapped inside of them. I think a YA Batman comic or Batman film can just lean more into the detective side of things, more into like the I'm observing, I'm gathering, I'm sneaking around in the shadows, foiling villains' plots, and then like catching them in a net, dropping a cage on top of them. Like, we do not need the hyperviolence.
No, I mean, really, honestly, that's all I'm speaking to is the intensity that we tell these Batman stories right now. Like, we just need to dial back a little bit and invite more people into the theater, like to join the Batman narrative.
It doesn't need to be animated.
No.
It doesn't need to be like Batman 66.
No.
It doesn't need to be wacky.
I just need a PG Batman movie. And you need great style. You need a great script. You need great character, great performances. Have all those things. Just dial it back a little bit and invite some more folks into the audience.
And we are talking additively. We are not talking about like we need to take away the violence from Batman, because I do think that that is a rite of passage for certain readers to be able to cross into like the more darker, scarier Batman stories.
Is flexible, and you can have an all ages Batman movie the same summer. You could have almost hard R Batman movie like The Dark Knight or Matt Reeves' The Batman. Both can exist, and I think both can sell tickets. Honestly, I really do. And I understand how we got here. Comic books starting in the 30s basically were a predominant children's delivery system for stories. And we grew up with those comics and we became adults and we were like, no, this stuff is a medium. It can tell any kind of story. This can be adult stuff too. Batman doesn't have to be Adam West. Frank Miller comes along with Batman Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, and it's like, see, we can tell these adult Batman stories. And ever since those two books, we've kind of just been on that track with a few exceptions. And I just think we need more exceptions to the children of Frank Miller.
One clear exception to that is DC's YA line, like specifically YA comics. I think what they're doing in the Gotham space is like super fun and inventive.
Yep.
They seem to be stuck in those digest forms, and they're not like blossoming into the cinematic universe. And that's really what we're talking about.
And speaking of stories, comic books that can teach lessons and invite every kind of audience to the table, we are discussing Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees.
Wait. Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees is not all ages. It is not for everyone.
It's one of the most disturbing comics I've read in a long time. And I would never give it to a child, even though there are elements of it that look like they're straight out of a Richard Scarry story.
Beneath the Trees is about this bear named Sam who owns a hardware store, and she is a vital and visible member of her community, but she just so happens to also be a super clean and efficient serial killer.
Yes.
And she does her killing mostly in the big city nearby, and then beneath the trees is where she's hiding the bodies.
Patrick Horvath obviously is inspired by the classic tune, The Teddy Bear's Picnic. And I don't know about you, listener, but I encountered that song in childhood, and I knew right when I heard it that it was sinister. And what Patrick Horvath is doing is really just taking advantage of that sinister feeling and pushing it as far as he can go.
Dun 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 dun. Is this minor? Dun 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 dun. Oh my God, it's major. Even like music theory wise, it's like I don't know how to feel about this. I'm uncomfortable. And for a little kid growing up with anxiety, that was a very familiar feeling to me. Because when you're a kid, you are receiving warnings all of the time. Don't talk to strangers. Don't leave the yard. Don't turn to certain channels on the television because something's going to happen and we can't tell you what it is. For me, Patrick is plugging into something so fundamental. It just lights up my brain like a Christmas tree.
This idea that you talked to him a little bit about in the conversation, that your parents would tell you not to do these things, but they wouldn't tell you necessarily why.
And then the things that you imagine are the why are so much worse probably than some of the warnings. Not all.
I mean, I would imagine some really heinous things. You know, I remember like I grew up in the Stranger Danger era, and John Walsh and what happened to his poor son Adam. I knew something had happened, but I didn't know what. And you're right. Like I would imagine really terrible things. I would then grow up and learn what happened to Adam Walsh,
and it
it's
is
way
really
worse.
terrible things.
It's way worse.
Yeah.
And so like that is the cloud, the murky paranoia and dread that Patrick Horvath is exploring with Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees.
But like to me it's like comforting because it is set in this very like for me like as a Gilmore Girls fan, like it's a very Stars Hollow setting.
Yeah.
It's a small town, should be very safe. It feels like a children's book. It does feel like Richard Scarry, but there is terrible things happening there and I get to see exactly what they are and I'm like I was right the whole time.
Yes. I hear what you're saying. Like the reason this comic works so well is because Patrick Horvath can pull off the Richard Scarry with the Dexter, right? Like both elements are so well executed, and when they clash together, it creates this other sensation that for me is horribly disturbing, but in the most exciting way possible.
Most of this first issue is dedicated to seeing how Sam gets away with being a murderer, and also getting introduced to this like small town's worth of colorful characters. But then in the last 2 pages, it takes a hard left.
Yeah. Like I was fully satisfied with Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees #1 as just a one shot.
Right.
And then those last 2 pages happen. You're like, oh no. There is a much bigger narrative going on.
I am clawing through time to make this second issue come sooner.
Yeah. And like the experience of reading Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, like sparked in me a craving for other kinds of tales like this one, and made me go to my shelves and consider what books really pair well with this one. And on that note, we need to get to our new segment,
Referrals, sponsored by Omnibus. Omnibus is a modern digital comic book store and reader app carrying your favorite single issues, volumes, and omnibuses all day and date. Just like your local comic book store, you pay per book, but digitally.
Their focus is on building an excellent customer shopping and reading experience and using novel discovery features to help fans find their next favorite book. They feature top-tier content and already have many of the top publishers in comics today.
In the spirit of helping people find their next new favorite book, we're launching a new referrals program. This is our 3rd episode doing it.
Yes.
When are we going to drop this paragraph out of our copy?
I'm not sure.
Sponsored by Omnibus in every comic book couples counseling episode.
The idea is to give our counselees, that's you guys, further reading on the themes of the episode. Think of it as us sending you to specialists to further your healing journey through comics. Lisa, usually you start things off with your referral, but can we change things up since this is our third time doing
Sure.
this?
Why would we commit so soon to like a set equation for getting these done?
Honestly, I'm just excited to talk about this comic book again. I feel like I am the champion for Love Everlasting by Tom King and Elsa Chartier. We had them on the podcast a year ago talking about the book, and since then it has developed into something that I don't think I was even really prepared for. But I don't want to talk about necessarily where it goes. I want to talk about where it starts and how it reminds me of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. In the first volume of Love Everlasting, we meet Joan Peterson, and she knows that she is living in the romance genre, specifically the way that we see the romance genre in comics of the 50s and 60s. But every time she falls in love, once she says the magic words to whatever object of affection is that month, a cowboy appears and blows her brains out. So there are rules that she has to follow, or rules that she has to avoid to survive this experience.
And you, as the reader, might not be a genre-tripping ingenue or a serial-killing bear, but you know what it feels like to have your routine upset and how unmooring it can feel for someone to mess with with what you cling to function.
So that's what I really wanted to zero in on in bringing Love Everlasting next to Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. Like, both are playing with genre, right? Both are mashing genres together. Horror plays a part in both books. In Love Everlasting's story, horror is invading the romance genres, and in Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, horror is entering into Richard Scarry land. And it's in that collision where you feel so uncomfortable, and both Sam and Joan are struggling with that sense of like, the world around me is not behaving the way I need it to behave. And what do you do when your environment turns against you?
That's a good one.
And while both books look nothing like each other, they're both wonderfully, expertly illustrated. These are some of my favorite looking comics of recent years. Now, I do worry that both of them are not necessarily for every comics reader. Like, I think both of these stories have elements in them that will inherently push people away, kind of like certain Batman movies might do. But that's also okay, right? Like, the audience that this comic is for and the audience that Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees is for are going to fall real hard for both of them.
Okay, it's my turn, and that is going to be a tough book to follow, but I think I've done it. Not that this is a competition, but this is a competition.
It sounds like a competition.
I based my choice on literally like 2 pages of Beneath the Trees when Sam is in the woods burying her victim, and then like a regular bear, a bear of the woods, just walks by. And I think a lot of times anthropomorphism is used in stories to create some kind of emotional distance for hard topics. But I think in a way, at least for me, it has the opposite effect, where instead of feeling more distant from the story because the animals are anthropomorphized, instead I start feeling more like an animal. I like that Patrick just walks right into that feeling.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to him specifically about that scene in this conversation.
Exactly. So my story that I picked off of Omnibus is one that challenges the way we think about the personhood of animals. So my choice is Primordial by Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino. And I know my last choice was Tenement, and I seem like such a stan right now, but like once this idea struck me, I could not pick anything else.
This is a great pick. It didn't occur to me at all, but now that you have said it, oh my goodness, I'm kind of jealous. I love Primordial, and I love Primordial for the reasons you're saying.
So for those of you who might not be familiar, Primordial takes place in the space race when we were sending animals into space like Laika, and then we sent monkeys and things like that to space. And so this is, what if those animals did not just die, but were taken to this other place? And then what if then they returned back to Earth? And it just has you thinking, like, what is the internal life of a dog really like? And what is the internal life of a monkey, of an ape that's been experimented on really like?
Yeah, and how far away from their experience is your experience?
Are they people? Are they people whom we haven't figured out how to communicate with?
Yeah. I wonderful pick. I love Primordial. Jeff Lemire, Andrea Sorrentino. I mean, you're going through a phase right now. You're like ripping through all their books, and for good reason, because they make great comics. And as you said, Primordial is available, waiting for you right now on Omnibus. So is Love Everlasting. Head on over to their digital comic book store. Browse around. There's a link in the show notes. And yeah, go shopping. That's what's great about Omnibus, is it really does feel like a store. They've set up the shelves. Go check out those shelves.
In our culture of streaming services and the feeling of entitlement to all art, we're at a place where we need to reconnect to the idea of, you want a book? You buy the book.
The single comic is valuable, and you don't spend $9.99 and get to go running through Barnes & Noble and just tearing the place apart, right? Like, Barnes & Noble's not your Netflix. Digital comic book shops should not be your Netflix, right? Like, it's a store. Right. It's rad. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and then you get your little collection that you get to look at, and you go like, I picked these. What impeccable taste I have.
And on that note of impeccable taste, let's get back to Patrick Horvath talking about Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, out from IDW Publishing on October 18th. I love Patrick. I know he's a listener. He might be listening. He's probably listening to this conversation right now. I hope we did okay by him.
And we've been plugging this episode for weeks, and we've been pronouncing his name wrong.
I just moved the R, like when I initially typed his name into my notes, and we copy and paste from one notes to the next notes, I just switched the R around. And so I've been saying Patrick, how have I been saying? I've been saying Patrick Horvath, and it's actually Patrick Horvath. Or is it Horvath? Or is it Horvath? Patrick, I'm sorry. We should have asked you while we were doing the interview, hey, how do you pronounce your last name?
But luckily, we had such a great conversation with him that we are going to be on first name basis whenever we see him, and we'll just call him Patrick.
As we do when he joins the Love Nest Zoom room right now. Patrick, welcome to Comic Book Couples Counseling. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to talk about Beneath the Trees. We loved it. And I want to start with, I used to work at a pre-K through 8th elementary school, and the teddy bears picnic day was like an extremely special day. All of the kids would get to come in their pajamas and bring their teddy bears. And of course, there would be the singing of that song. And it was a very sweet and not at all menacing event. So I want to know, how long has this song been festering in your life? When did it bring forth into this murder mystery?
The first time I'd heard the song, the Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, always seemed sinister, like from the get-go. I always thought it was, and I came to that song way later in life. So I was definitely an adult, I think, the first time I'd heard it. And so, when I'd heard that, I was like, what is it? What is that? What is it that nobody sees? Like, what do they do? And then along maybe like 5 years ago or so, I had drawn this bear, this like anthropomorphic bear walking along with like a bloody axe. And it was just a thing to draw, and I thought it would be funny. And the two like immediately combined in my head. And so that's sort of, so it's been a while.
That song, especially when you watch like the animated version of it, like the classic cartoon version of that song, I am sure that I encountered it in my youth, but I had not revisited it in a long time until we finished issue 1 of your book. And then when you revisit that song, like you're saying, it is demented. It's not
melodically, it's like weird. It starts in like, is this Dorian mode? Is this D minor? Oh, it's F major. I don't feel safe.
And yes, and it's not just like, well, what are they doing? The singer of the song is going like, watch out.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't go to the forest.
Yeah. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to go there and see what they do.
And I am compelled to like really dig into the origin of that song. I don't know if you've dug into the origin of it, but I need to know more.
It's definitely older, and there's a bunch of older recordings of it. So I mean, it's got a long history, and I also feel like a lot of the early versions of that song just have because they're so old sounding, and there's just like patina sort of to the audio quality that you're like, it just feels sinister. Like, so I don't know, it sort of has like a haunted toy quality or something.
And I knew what I was getting into when reading your issue, because the cover is so evocative. Like immediately it's that clash of cute and terrifying,
salty sweet.
But then I'm reading the comic, and as you're flipping through the early stages of that story, and we get to what Sam the Bear is up to, it's a full-on horror comic. It's extremely graphic. It's extremely upsetting. And I'm wondering, when you are finally executing those pages, those panels, is there a glee? Like, is there a delight that you are taking in the execution of that first execution?
It's yes, but only in the sense of it. I don't know. It's funny because I have a long history of just working in horror stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm obviously very drawn to it. When you get into violence and gore and everything that sort of marks a horror film, a lot of that stuff on its face value isn't necessarily appealing to me so much as the context for it and the issues it's sort of talking about. And so like when I get to this like the big moment in issue 1 where Sam's doing what she does, I feel like there is glee. And a lot of that too is sort of it's weird because as an artist, you end up really inhabiting sort of the mind of the characters you're drawing, just from like an acting sort of standpoint, as you're trying to get the performance right on the page, right? And so like you're getting into this mindset, which is weird. It's a weird place to be. But I really wanted to get into that sort of ecstasy of her doing exactly what she wants to do. And it's very upsetting, and the violence is also, I think, partially very upsetting because it's so cold and just very calculated. And so when I get into that, the depicting it's like incredibly interesting to me, also because it is such a hard turn, given the context of this cute world that we're sort of diving into. As it came together, I was very pleased with it. with the level of the gore slash, I wouldn't even say like the level of it, but how grounded it kind of feels, given that it's so fanciful or whimsical.
And the art style, for those of you who perhaps are listening in the car and haven't seen the art for this episode, it isn't like Richard Gorey. It's like Busy Town. Like it's like very sweet, very cute. Like, did you have children's books or kid lit illustration in the back of your mind that was inspiring the setting?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Richard Scarry stuff was for sure a huge influence.
I like how Lisa called it Richard Gorey.
Yeah.
No,
you did.
What's Richard Gorey's first name?
No, you're thinking Edward Gorey and Richard Scarry.
Edward Gorey and Richard Scarry.
So I've mashed them up. But I mean, it's not Edward Gorey. Like you're not giving something that is creepy on its face.
Right. It's definitely more in Richard Scarry town for sure. And I think, I mean, that was a huge inspiration. Because I mean, like the Richard Scarry depiction is like even more. It's way more kid lit friendly. And the depictions are sort of like their faces. I love their faces. And for a split second was like, do I try and render them just like a little more cutesy, a little more naive or something? And ultimately it didn't. But the setting of the Richard Scarry, like a lot of his busy town stuff feels like post World War II, like idyllic small town, everybody has a place to fit into. And I think that was a huge inspiration in terms of conceptualizing like Woodbrook, the town, and the characters that sat in it. And then I definitely, I mean, some of the rendering and stuff is, it's more involved than that, but it's still like, that was a huge inspiration for sure.
What were you a creepy kid? Like as a child, did you also see kind of the dark side of things?
Sure. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I grew up with was a lot of Roald Dahl, a lot of British stuff, thanks to my folks. And I grew up in Burlington, Iowa, so it was a pretty I don't want to say like bland, but like there wasn't a lot of like immediate inspiration for stuff around. I was definitely drawn to stuff that was not the common thing that a lot of my, fellow kids at school would be into. But like I was for sure drawn to like a lot of the darker stuff, a lot more interesting to me. It was just a lot more compelling.
Because I remember like I was one of those like idyllic children where like, oh, the world is magical and everything is fine and safe. And then like third grade was like when the anxiety set in, and because you were constantly being warned not to do things. And I grew up like in the 80s where stranger danger was like a huge thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
yes.
well, what's the stranger gonna even do to
yes.
you? Like, and so getting all of those warnings with like zero context, like that is the fear that I feel like Beneath the Trees plugs into, where you're being sold this like the world is a safe and beautiful place, but don't go in the woods alone. And that's why we like manifest, oh, there must be a monster underneath my bed, because people are warning me like the world is not a safe place. And why?
Yeah. I think the stranger danger is an excellent concept to bring up too, in terms of like what this is sort of tapping into. And it's even like more sinister than that, because it's like these are like the conceit is that like Sam is just a member of the community that people have known for decades and decades, and they have no idea like this sort of monstrous side of her. And so it's like even worse than stranger danger, because like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so but that idea of like that there is this sort of sinister thing, this element, right, that anybody could sort of fall victim to if you're not vigilant, is also sort of like so abstract, I think, to a lot of the folks in this town, that they're completely just not, it's not even on their radar, you know what I mean? Versus like the city as a, something to contrast against.
And then the way that Sam's aware of all of that, and
for sure
has rules that they must follow to do what they do. And so to me, when I'm reading the comic, what is great about it is that you have a deep understanding of both tones and both worlds that you're exploring. And we've touched a little bit on, the things that you're referencing children's book wise, kidlit wise, but on the serial killer side, what's the inspiration? How does Sam become this type of serial killer?
Yeah, there's no like one referent that I've had that was like a guiding star, but it was sort of an amalgam of a lot of different research into serial killers, and I was trying to just piece together like what is the profile of Sam that's driving her to do what she does, in the very specific way that she does it, and I kind of just pulled different elements of these like various psych profiles from serial killers that I would read in different books. It was definitely, it was it was a very dark research period. I don't recommend like diving into
Lisa and I have discovered lockdown, we've become like true crime junkies, and we feel very weird about it.
Sure. Yeah.
This is voyeuristic.
It's voyeuristic.
Yeah.
It's exploitative. These are real people's stories, and they're awful. And here I am, eating my dinner to their Netflix program. And there's just something inherently compelling about that. And I do wonder if it actually extends from my 80s childhood of stranger danger, where I was told there was all these dangerous things as a kid, but no specifics were ever given. And so now I'm just deeply interested in the specifics.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's part of it. I would also imagine it has a huge component of you just being like, would I fall victim to that?
Sure.
Like, would I be savvy enough to see what happened, or like see everything leading up to me all of a sudden being, caught, like checkmated by this person, or like what, or would I just completely be another victim? Could I escape? Like, there's so like, what is it that they do? Are there chances to like get out of this? Like, there's so many different things that I feel like you're drawn to with true crime. And it's, I have the same conflict that you just mentioned as well, where you're just like, I don't feel cool consuming this as a person. So like, it feels icky, and at the same time, like very weirdly necessary. I don't know.
Yeah, compulsive. Like Sam's victim that we see in this first issue, like I would totally fall for it. Of course.
Yeah.
I'm a nice person.
The Ted Bundy move. And I would too. And I'd be like, oh, we can get you up and running no time. Like, I feel like, to see someone in distress who has like a simple request of like, can you help me out? I would 100%. I think that is part of the reason why I decided to go with that. And it's also so, it's just so cold-blooded to prey on someone's kindness. That was another reason why I wanted to put it in specifically, to just highlight. I mean, the thing is that like, I feel with getting into Sam, and you see throughout issue 1 for sure, is there's no, that connection, that humanity connection is just completely void. And all it's all just like, it's, it's her just computing what needs to happen to make things go. And she's totally, willing to exploit every sort of, emotional manipulation, etc.
So what gets me really excited also about Beneath the Trees is that it is a serialized mystery. And I'm a person who loves like plots and schemes. Like, I love to be rewarded for being like a good and observant reader, where I'm like, oh, I too am gathering clues. You know what I mean? So how was it composing this mystery? Did you start from the end and kind of work backwards, or did you let it happen a little bit more organically?
I definitely started from the end and worked backwards. I can't do the other. I've done the organic method, and it's completely it is like a 20% success rate for me. Or it just takes forever to go around the world and come back to being like, you know what, this whole chunk that I sort of had to work through to get to this little golden tidbit at the end was a long way to get. I wish I would have just started with the tidbit and then, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, and I mean, that's something I've found just from the creative process over the past like couple decades of doing film work and whatever, and screenwriting, and just the way that and other people are excellent at doing, the organic method of just working through and letting themselves discover the story. And that's great. But and especially with this, where I knew essentially what the end result needed to be. And so it was much easier for me to just like figure out all those points and then start to work backwards to figure out the best way to tell that story.
So I'm reading the comic and I'm loving the comic, and I'm going, the comic as it exists for the first 18 pages, super compelling. I could read an entire series just going in this one direction. And without spoiling things, in the last few pages, something happens that upends the story and
Mm-hmm.
turns it into something a little different. And since you work backwards, obviously you knew early on in the storytelling that you were going to change directions in the first issue, and this is what the bulk of the story is going to be, presumably.
Yeah, definitely.
But you take a voyeuristic thing and you turn it into a true thriller. Like, we're no longer just like seeing what goes on beneath the trees where nobody sees.
Sure.
Now it's like,
it's not beneath the trees.
Yeah. It's out from underneath the trees. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sorry, Brad. So what's the main
what is the question? That is how it always goes on Comic Book Couples Counseling. So what's the question, Brad? The question is, why the thriller? Why
take it this way? Why take it this direction as opposed to keep it with like a more of like a Dextery, like we just kind of see the things that go on.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, essentially, I think I wanted to have a universal hook for the whole thrust of the comic. And obviously, when you have like a psychopath serial killer who's, murdering these really cute animals in cold blood, like I feel like it can be compelling, but I feel like there's a way to make it more emotionally grounded with an audience. And it was to give Sam a total existential upending and to make it whatever she had been doing and has been doing for decades is all of a sudden under threat. And it's immediately something I felt that anyone could relate to in terms of, having whatever they thought was their thing, whatever they do, to be totally, threatened with possible, life-shattering repercussions.
Right. So like the genius thing for me is how it then plays with empathy.
Sure.
And, you have feelings about this character for 18 pages, and then you introduce this other element, and it's going to not just upend her life, but the way I perceive everything and how I observe her.
Yeah, like, I mean, her status has been unquoted, and nobody wants that shit. Like, everybody wants, like, they already have their plan of the way their life is going to go, and everything is in place, and you're like, okay, this till the end. And then, of course, something comes along and goes like, oh, no, somebody is upsetting. Like, my plan is ruined by someone being, chaotic and less rational than me.
It's 100% the introduction of chaos, especially with Sam's very and as wild and violent, I guess, as her secret life is. It's also like very ordered, and that's a huge component. And then to have this chaotic element show up, that's gonna threaten everything, is definitely like it's very upsetting. Like it's the ending is very upsetting for the whole town of issue 1, obviously, and it's upsetting for Sam, but in a completely different way.
And that part of me who was trying to weasel into what your emotional experience was while you were creating it is really just me projecting how I felt while I was reading it, where I get to these moments, I'm like, this is so demented, and I'm kind of giggling and feeling bad that I'm giggling.
Yes.
But then you get to that last page, and, it's like, it got a big laugh out of me. And then the laugh stops, and then you just focus in on Sam's expression. And whoa.
Oh, so much.
It's so good.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad it landed so well with y'all.
So the part that has me really intrigued, it just like as like a little like brain worm, was the introduction of Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And for Sam to go into the forest, and in the forest there are animals that are not wearing clothes and are
Thank
not
you so much
upright.
for bringing this up. Yeah.
So could you speak to the inspiration of including Mother Nature in this story?
Yes. So nobody's brought this up yet, and I'm very curious because other people I've talked to that have read it have been like, the part with her in the forest when she has the moment with the bear is it stuck with me, like after reading it. And I was like, oh, good. And I've gotten that response a lot, and but nobody's brought it up yet. So thank you for bringing it up. It's definitely, and this whole element plays out throughout. So
hell yes.
So the idea of just having animals in the anthropomorphic animal world was very exciting to me. And again, was like a Richard Scarry inspiration because he has it in his books. And what's even more is, and you'll get into this more too, but he has like these very like, if you even think for like a minute about some of the elements he has in there, they're very problematic. And like, for instance, like the butcher shop that Sam goes into, like in the first page or whatever, it's that was a complete Richard Scarry inspiration, because he has, I think it's one of the Busy Town book covers, and he just has like this butcher shop, and it's like a pig. It's like a pig running the butcher shop. And you're like, what is going? And there's like sausage links and stuff, and you're just like, what is like what is this world? And so like the idea of just it just completely inspired me to just start thinking about like what is the connection that these animal people have with these animals that they've obviously, like, you start like, okay, so you're going to make a comic about anthropomorphic animals. So you have like a really broad space to work in, right? One of the big things for me was just like the world building and like, what is it exactly that it carries over from our world as a corollary to this world? And like, how far do we want to go with it? Like, are they going to do like pop culture references? Are you going to do religious stuff? Like what, and in what way does this show up? You know what I mean? Like, is it skewed? Like, and to me, there's definitely a lot of crossover, but it's all very skewed. And so like, there's obviously like an evolutionary element to these people, right?
Right.
that live. And so there's a connection to these animals that's like way stronger. And it's funny too, because like the human embryo goes through all these different stages when it grows, you know, and becomes a human form from the zygote. And so like it crosses through all these different, you know, different stages that are also the same as other animals, right? So like, sorry, I'm going on this tangent.
No, this is what I want. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, so to me, like it was very, very important to have these moments, and to plug it in like almost in the middle of the first issue of Sam coming face to face with like her sort of, you know, evolutionary corollary of just like having like this bear moment. And for the first time, like not even doing it consciously, but possibly subconsciously, starting to consider herself and kind of where she fits into that. Because and to me, and this is totally like something you just brush over and think it's a funny moment in the book, but like to me, like it's the first moment where seeds planted of that where Sam is actually starting to question her own self. And I feel like Sam, without spelling all this out, because I didn't want to, I don't know, I feel weird about spelling stuff out for readers, but like to myself, like Sam's like gotten to the point where she's at, just by virtue of her being very smart and then also being completely immoral. And so she's sort of never questioned like why it is that she just knows what she wants to do and has essentially manufactured this whole life in a you know, very naive small town where she won't be bothered. And then to have this moment with the bear, which is arguably like in Mother Nature, you know, because there are other elements to it as well. But like to have that moment at her being her true self, but still not quite realizing like what it is that she's doing, like the sheer just strange surrealness of what it is she's doing in the middle of the woods being witnessed by this very natural order is totally like at the heart of, I think, what, you know, this existential upending is.
Well, like for me, like just having that like little moment makes me go, well, I'm barely, like, me not being an animal is just a story that I'm telling myself.
You're barely like, we're so connected to the animals that we're eating, right?
Right.
Like, and what I loved about this moment is by doing this, by having, you know, an animal bear and a sentient or a human, an anthropomorphized bear, by having those two things, you're just telling the reader, yo, you're doing this already. You're having these moments all the time when you go out in nature.
Yeah. Yes. And I feel like, and it's also like you mentioned, like the connection to the animals that we eat. I feel like it's all just unquestioned.
Yes.
Largely by so many people. And it's funny because like I do question that a lot. So like, and it's informed my life over the past couple of decades, but like it's totally an interesting It's an interesting thing that largely just goes unlooked.
Mm-hmm. Because the second that you look, it's scary.
Yeah. And it brings up a lot of issues. Yeah, 100%.
The second you like open up the closets in Busy Town, it's full of skeletons. It's scary in there.
Oh man, to see this moment with Sam and the bear in this comic, it reminds me every time I read Usagi Yojimbo, the Stan Sakai book. Lisa and I are huge fans of it, and it's like the biology of that comic is so fascinating because you'll have the rabbit Ronin, you'll never see a bunny, but you'll see horses, you'll see snakes, you'll see other types of creatures, and you always wonder like, well, how did Usagi get to this point?
But like, to me, it's like even more creepy to not point at it and say that it's weird.
Sure. Yeah.
So
reassuring that you are pointing to it, because I do see that scene, and like I have this moment many times when I'm doing interviews is I interpret something in the book, and then the person who made the book is like, oh, I never really thought about it that way. Like that happens all of the time.
Sure.
And like, so for me to go like, I see this and I am unnerved, and for you to go like, you're correct, I'm just like, oh, thank God.
Validation.
Thank God.
Yeah, it was it's I mean, it's not the front and center element to the book, obviously, but I think it's like it's the quickest path to the heart of it, for sure.
Right.
Well, we've only read the first issue, and now I'm like, I mean, I was eager before, but now I'm crazy eager to read the rest of this series. Because I could see, and you don't need to comment on this, but I could see this moment being a huge, not just emotional moment, maybe even not just a narrative moment, but like a thematic moment in the whole series. And it to use the person who brought it up to you, like it is a haunting moment that you do carry with you after you've already experienced all these horrible images in this book. It's that it's that moment that stands out.
Yeah. And it's definitely, this theme is most definitely embellished. So you'll be seeing a lot more of it.
These are the interviews that we also really hate doing because it's like one issue.
I know. Yeah. Sorry.
All of the clues I've gathered, and I want you to I'm just going to look at your face. You don't have to say anything, but I'm going to know if I'm on to something.
Well, Lisa and I did go through the cast afterwards, and we were like, all right, suspects. Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And that's super fun. It's super fun. Patrick, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like us to cover?
No, I mean, I feel like this has been great.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So yeah, obviously, Patrick, we're like crazy enthused by this series.
Excellent.
And I'm so curious to see what the reaction to the series is going to be.
Me too.
I bet there's like a lot of anxiety around that too. How could there not be?
Oh my God. You're working this, you're just sitting at this desk behind me. You can see I got my desk right behind me as I'm speaking here. And it's like, that's where I sit by myself drawing a lot of this. And you're like, is this good or is this garbage? Or like, where is this? I don't know. I hope they like it.
Well, two people like it for sure.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that.
Screw it up. He can still screw it up.
He could still screw it up.
Oh, yeah.
He's got so many issues ahead of him.
Oh, my God.
That is the ultimate mystery.
But for those that want to continue this conversation beyond this conversation, where can they find you online?
You can find me on formerly known as Twitter at Patrick Horvath. You can find me on Instagram at CatbirdPlanet, and that's probably the best two places to find me. Or you can find me on my website, just patrickhorvath.com.
And find him in the comic book shop and pick up the first issue of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. Patrick, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Yay.
Yeah, there you are. Once again, our thanks to Patrick Horvath for talking Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, which is, once again, coming out from IDW Publishing on October 18th. I hope that this conversation convinced you to put it in your pull box. Maybe it's already in your pull box, but it is just such a fascinating narrative, but most importantly, being executed at the top tier.
It's gorgeous, it's compelling, And it has that kind of momentum where you finish that first issue and you want the second issue immediately. I want to go back to the forest. I want to know who is the butcher hanging up in that shop window. These things have been worming around in the back of my mind since childhood. And the fact that he is kind of fulfilling that worry is like really, it's delicious.
So in the first issue, when we get that moment between Sam and the bear in the forest, that is like that halts you in your reading experience. You're like, hold up. What kind of comic is this?
And it's the kind of thing where you go like, is the story actually going to deliver on this moment? Right, or is it just like a wink to camera?
Which is why we had to explore that with Patrick. And Patrick says, no, the comic is going to have more moments like that. We're going to explore what does that actually mean for Sam and the world around Sam. And that right now, as exciting as the last 2 pages of the first issue are, and the element that introduces into the story, it's that Sam and the bear moment in the middle of the first issue that I really want to excavate.
Mm-hmm. But beneath the trees where nobody sees is not the only thing that has us excited about the future. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Yes, so we're wrapping up, hopefully, as you're listening to this, our Lost Weekend and Fantastic Fest experiences. And that's going to lead almost immediately into the New York Comic Con. Mm-hmm. And Lisa and I are on 2 really incredible panels at New York Comic Con this year. The first one we're moderating, and it's going to have Kevin Eastman and a bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle artists and writers on that panel. We can't say exactly who those people are yet, but by the time this episode's out, it's probably out there. So again, look at the links in the show notes. Check out our social media page. But the panel itself is called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Next Mutation of Turtle Power from IDW Publishing. So speaking of IDW Publishing, yes, we're at that mega panel at New York Comic Con. I'm super nervous about it.
Yeah. But we're gonna do a good job. We're gonna do our research. We're gonna do our homework. We're gonna be fine.
It's such an honor. It's such an honor. I'm very, very excited.
Yes.
And then I should probably say when that is. So that's on Saturday, October 14th at 10:45 a.m. in room 406.2. And then that same day, later in the evening at 6 o'clock at the River Pavilion, we are going to be on a panel called The Awesome Power of Comic Book Podcasts and How You Can Start One Yourself. We are doing that with our buds Bodder Milligan from the Shortbox podcast, Chris Hacker and Aaron Knowles from the Oblivion Bar podcast, plus the good folks over at Previews World. So if you're coming to New York, please come to both of those panels. And when you hear the words Comic Book Couples Counseling, give us a huge round of applause. Show New York that we're a big deal.
Yeah, even if we need that little boost. Yeah, we need that little boost.
We definitely need that little boost. So we're very excited about that. On the podcast front, our next episode will be another creator conversation with David Dasmalchin talking about Count Crowley. We've had that chat already. It's a really fascinating deep dive into David Dasmalchin as a creator and how he is all up inside the Count Crowley comic books.
Yes.
And then over on the Patreon feed, we have 3 Married to Singles episodes. These are episodes where we ask comic creators and comic fans to pick out their favorite single issue and dissect it with us. We launched it back in July with Daniel Warren Johnson talking about the Nom number 9. Then we had Jason Ayers, the superstar WWE referee, talking about the Uncanny X-Men number 183. And our latest episode is Christian Ward going all the way through Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on a Serious Earth. And that episode will really help you understand how he created his new comic book series, Batman City of Madness.
And Brad, don't forget, also on the Patreon, we had a little visit from one Kevin Eastman.
Yeah. He came on to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and how reinvention and remaking is inherent to the franchise. And we also talked about that radical ending of Mutant Mayhem and what he initially thought of that ending and how he got to his final feelings about that ending. Don't miss that chat in the Patreon. All of our Patreon episodes, we have hundreds of episodes, thousands of hours available to you for the low price of $1 a month or $12 a year. $1 a month. Like, best deal in comic book podcasting right there.
Okay, Brad, I actually have to go to work. I'm leaving. So I just want to leave you with this thought. If you go down in the woods today, you better not go alone.
Okay.
It's lovely down in the woods today, but safer to stay at home. Where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
You can find me at home on most social medias at MouthDork. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have some words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show poster, send them to Karen Charm at Karen_X-Men fan. Lisa, where can our listeners send their words of why can I not do that sentence anymore? Lisa, where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
I'm always accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Google, Apple Podcasts, or whatever app you prefer. We're everywhere. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon, where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on all the socials at CBCC Podcast. Check out our socials right now. Did we, in fact, just interview Malcolm McDowell? It might have happened.
You can give us the gift of 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, and if you'd like to do an act of service, why not write a review of the show while you're there? We're fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
So until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Doopy-doopy-da.
Okay, Brad, it's time to end this episode. We're in the past. We have 2 film festivals still to go to.
Oh, we got to pack. Laundry's still not done.
No, it's not. Let me leave you with this thought. If you go down to the woods today, you better not go alone. It's lovely down in the woods today, but safer to stay at home. For every bear that ever there was will gather there for certain, because I can't do this outro. I get too tongue-tied. Let's do it again.